So today I want to talk about sand leveling, show you a couple projects that I worked on recently, and this is the first time I've ever really worked with it. This topic could definitely get quite lengthy, so I'm going to try my best to keep this short and sweet. There's quite a bit of info here that I need to share with you to make sure all of the bases are covered. So let's get to it.
I could go on for days, oh, you know I get carried away.
You know what I love about this truck? Is that digital gauge just decides not to work all the time. So then I just go, and it turns back on. What'd you do to this weather?
It's the worst.
Well, today I decided to help my friend here. Doesn't live too far from me, and sort of a lawn nerd as well. So we're gonna do some sand leveling.
I've got so much to say, I'll take my time. I could go on for days, oh, you know I get carried.
So everyone wants a nice flat yard to mow. It becomes much more enjoyable, and especially with real mowing, the enjoyment that you get out of a flat yard in that scenario is much better than if it's bumpy and you're bouncing the mower around a lot. And also the look of it at a low cut and being very flat and nice just gives it an awesome look in that scenario as well. So today let's talk about some sand leveling, why I've used some soil in the past, what kinds of sand that you want to look for, and all that goes with it. The only thing that I've actually used in the past is some soil on my yard, some screen topsoil to do leveling projects and get things fairly level to where they are right now. The reason for this was that pretty much every time I was doing that, I was also seeding along with it. For me personally, I like seeding into the soil, and can it be done with sand? Yes, it can, but you need to be on top of your watering, and you need to really figure out your fertilizer because sand doesn't have any nutrient value there to help the seed grow, and because of that, you sort of have to be the person doing the work and having that all dialed in. So it can definitely be done. It is more difficult in my opinion, so if you're not more advanced, most of the time I would tell homeowners when they're wanting to do a seeding project, soil is just something that works easier. So the same thing goes in my yard. I've actually avoided sand leveling up until this point just because I needed to learn some of the basics of everything. I needed to feel comfortable that I understand going forward what's going to be required for maintenance, what kind of sand do I need to get, how much should I put down, and those are things that I'm still learning from various pros that I'm talking to and reading various research papers about this whole sand cap system. So let's look at this first specification called C144. So these specifications are all about mixtures of particle size and wanting to have certain percentages of those actual particles. So the first one here on a C144, I'm going to show you an example of what the ranges should be, and then an example of this sand that was tested to show you that it's within range of this actual C144 standard. Now this standard again should be nationwide, so any sand supplier, if you can ask them to have an analysis done, or they can show you an analysis on the sand that you're using, or ask them if it covers these specifications that we're talking about, they should be able to tell you this. Now I've run into some issues here locally where I haven't got very far with the people asking these questions. They didn't seem to be really excited when I asked those questions, and so I went to some other pros in the area, one of whom I'm going to talk about here in a second with a paper that I also want to show you about sand and about how to top dress the things you need to look at. But his name is Tim Van Loo, so hopefully in the future I'm going to actually be doing some more work with him and following what he does here at our local university at Iowa State. He does amazing work there on all of their sports turf, and I think it'd be pretty fascinating to show you some of the job that he does. So the next thing that we can move on to would be called USGA spec sand. So this is going to be for the golf industry. They have stricter standards on these particle sizes for this USGA sand. This typically is going to cost more, obviously, but you're getting a quality product. You know what the specifications are, and then it meets all of those. And in most cases, in my opinion, if you're going to do the work, you might as well do it right the first time and get the best product that you can get. So in this area here, he just put down a light layer, and then basically I was using the Swardman to try to brush that into the canopy a little more. Using those level tools, the lawn levels, which we were using today, works really well, but also using a brush or a broom of some kind to really get it down towards the soil is going to help. That's going to happen with your watering too. If you have any areas that you can really push it down into the canopy, that would be awesome. And having the brush on the Swardman, I wanted to try that today too. Also, I wanted to mention this here really quickly that I bought this leveling tool a couple years ago and then found out that it's actually an Iowa-based company that's not all that far from me who makes these. So I've actually been talking to them recently, and we are able now to offer these directly through my website. There's a 30-inch and a 36-inch available directly on my website store if you want to check them out there. So I'll have a link in the description for that, for these lawn leveling tools. Now, what goes into the maintenance after you've actually top dressed is really why I've gotten a little bit leery about doing this on my soil so far. The reason for this is that organic matter can build up on this sand layer, and you need to be continually top dressing year after year to remove that organic matter and help break it down quickly so that it doesn't form a layer there in the soil that causes issues. So a lot of people would love to level their lawn and leave it as is and just think that one time of sand is going to be enough and then they don't have to do anything anymore. But unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. A couple other points to note with that is that it really is important to have that same sand available that you're using if possible, because you don't want to create new layers. So anytime you switch materials, you're going to be creating new layers in the soil that don't match the previous layer. It would be absolutely best if you could continue to have that same sand available and continue to use the same sand for top dressing once you start. Another important aspect of this maintenance going forward is a lot of people in home lawns will core aerate and then they will leave those cores on the surface to break down. We would not want to do this in this situation after you've put down the sand, because if you bring up your soil layer, let that sit on top and break down, then you're causing a layer on top of that sand. And again, we don't want any layering of different materials after you put that sand on top. You want the coarse material, the sand, to stay on the top layer, and that's going to be how it is going forward. Some more sand fun today. And this is actually one of my friend's yards that he runs a lawn care company, so he doesn't need any advice from me. But today I'm going to help do some sanding work. And this is a Kentucky bluegrass ryegrass mix. As you can see, there's a lot of shade here in this yard, so it's something that he deals with. But you can still see he's just trying to get this leveled more now, because as you'll notice if you have a bunch of trees, is that a lot of times that is one of the difficulties, is things get kind of bumpy.
I just mixed in some of this rescue blend. It's got a little bit of blue in it too, but I think it maybe just go heavy around the outside, you think, where it's bare?
Yeah, probably.
And then just kind of leave some of those other spots that are full. And then if I need to, throw a little bit on the stuff that got really heavy, you know, where we're those deep spots that you pointed out.
How much sand to put down is one thing that I'm still struggling to understand completely. I've been reading some different things, and of course I have a couple people here that have graciously been pros in the industry who have helped to guide me here as well on some of this info that I want to present to you. So as far as leveling goes, there is some research that's been done that shows lighter layers more frequently will add to the stability of everything over time. Now, if you've ever done sand work and you've put down an inch or something like that, you'll notice that it's probably not extremely stable at the beginning until everything really gets worked down in there. And most people, again, probably think this is a one and done process, and that's why they put it on so heavy. But for me, what I might do going forward, once I start getting going in a program like this on my own yard, I'm probably going to go lighter layers more frequently. Hopefully that will stabilize things. And also, when you have low cut turf, it's much easier to bury things when you're going with heavier layers. And any of the grass that gets buried in a cool season grass is going to have trouble surviving that, because it needs those grass blades to see the sunlight and to continue growing that way. So if you're going to put down a layer on low cut turf, it's probably going to be better to go lighter anyway and let those grass blades come up through. If you have warm season grass like Bermuda, you can go pretty heavy on sand and even bury some areas, and most of the time that will come back through that pretty well. But how much to put down sort of comes down to doing it more frequently, putting down lighter layers, and making sure nothing gets smothered. So we're at like 3 hours later now, and here's what it looks like. Pretty much looks like a beach at this point. There's definitely some deep spots there. So if you want to see a top dressing calculator, I found one online as well where you can put in the amount that you want to lay down. It will tell you how many tons and cubic yards is estimated over your square footage. So that's a nice tool to have if you're trying to plan out how much that you need to get. So when you should put down the sand is when it's most actively growing. So spring and fall for cool season lawns will be when the grass is most actively growing, and it can handle growing up through that sand pretty quickly, and it's not going to sit on there. If you did this midsummer and the grass was already stressed out, it may have difficulty trying to survive through that. Now warm season grass would be opposite, because your best season for growing is during the hot weather in the summer. So you get to have the fun of doing all this work in 100-degree heat, but that would be the best time for you guys when it's hottest and the grass is growing during that hot part of the year. Lastly, when you're doing these projects, again, I think it's important to plan your budget accordingly. Get the best products that you can. That will give you the best level of success, and I think in the end you'll be happy and you won't regret that you went on the cheap at the beginning. So my friend Ryan helped me a lot today with a lot of this info to make sure I covered all my bases. Thank you to him. Thank you to that article there from Tim as well that explains a lot of what I wanted to talk about. And Ryan wanted me to tell you here at the end of this video that please don't use play sand. If you have questions, let me know down in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.